I love that urban talk coming from the UK. You guys have your own set of...
I'm trying to be a gangster. Yeah, I'm trying to be a gangster down with the kids.
You guys got your own little set of rules there of gangster talk. I remember that short film you did, The Intruder, with the kids on the street corner and messing with the war vet and stuff. It's always interesting. Oh, yeah. Well, folks, tonight we've got a special guest for you. We don't do this very often, but when we do, it's always somebody that we respect and we love their work of. And this gentleman is no different in that department. He's an AFI graduate. He's an award-winning filmmaker based out of Los Angeles. He's got a BA in English and film and a master's in directing from the prestigious AFI. His two first short films, The Frontman and The Lawman, both won top honors before taking on the task of depicting an American murderer. Carly and I would like to welcome our guest tonight, whose name I'm certain to butcher, as did the Academy of Television, Matthew Gentile. Did I get that right?
Gentile.
Okay.
I'm Jewish, so I can't be a Gentile. But yes. Gentile. It's Italian. It's a tricky one, though. So.
Oh, it's Italian. Okay, so all right, Jewish Italian.
I think Jason was just trying to say gin.
Gin.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Carter's a huge gin fan. So
my dad's Italian Catholic. My mom's Russian Jewish. So Gentile though is my father's last name.
Nice.
So yeah.
Oh, you got a whole mix there going on. That's pretty cool.
I'm a mutt.
Yeah, and you're from New York, right?
From Brooklyn, New York, yes.
Brooklyn. Oh, man. All right. Very cool. I haven't made it out to New York yet, but my wife has, and she absolutely loves it, and I can't wait to get out there.
It's fun. It's fun. I go back. I live in Los Angeles now. I have for now almost a decade, but I grew up there, and Brooklyn's a great. I grew up in Brooklyn Heights. It's a great place.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Now, in between the differences between LA and Brooklyn, what do you love more? Because LA is kind of like its own world, in my opinion.
Well, I moved out to Los Angeles to go to film school. I went to AFI. By the way, thank you for that very nice bio.
Oh, absolutely.
That was a very nice introduction. So I moved out to Los Angeles to go to film school. At first, it was kind of hard to gauge the city. The school I went to, AFI, was so intense and all-consuming that I wasn't really able. And it was a great experience, but I just wasn't able to really experience the city. I couldn't make it to the beach for 3 years, and everyone always talks about the beach in Los Angeles.
My God.
So once I started to really get to know the city, LA is a great place. I mean, it has a lot of layers to it, and I find that the longer you live in LA, the more it reveals itself to you. Like there's a lot of cool spots and just different parts of it. It's almost like a series of towns connected by highways more than an actual proper
absolutely,
city. Whereas New York is like a beating pulse all the time. Everything's there, right? And I love, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But I'm in LA for now because that's where the business is.
Right. Now, when you go back to New York, do you get to partake in any filmmaking experiences out there? Are you ever thinking about setting something up in New York, or what? Are you just solely just pushing for the LA adventure? Because a lot of people these days are like, you don't have to be in LA to do this, but I mean, I do think that there is some credibility to being in LA, of course.
Yeah, it's a good question, because the reality is now, I think, especially since COVID and the pandemic, you really can do business anywhere because so many meetings are happening virtually. It has changed, right? As opposed to say when I first started. But the beauty and the danger and the hard part about film is there really is no one way to, build a career. There are multiple, and where I came from, New York, it's a great film scene. It's a very different film scene, but it's much more of an independent film scene rather than out here, which is more of a studio driven film scene. But they're just different, and there are a lot of great filmmakers that live in New York and live all around the world. Once you're at a certain point in your career, you can kind of live anywhere, they say. I think there's directors who live in London or, Colin Trevorrow lives in Vermont, right? I heard people kind of live anywhere they want to. It's at a certain point, but For me, going to film school at AFI, that's really my tie, because my whole team that did American Murder pretty much came from AFI, my cinematographer, my editors, a lot of the people that were kind of on and even like crew members, camera operator, visual effects,
That's
artists.
so cool.
So yeah,
that's really nice that you've connected with them and then moved forward with them. That's so nice to hear.
Yeah, it is pretty great, and I before I went to film school, I worked at a talent agency, William Morris Endeavor, and I actually worked there in New York, but I made so many LA contacts from there that I have kind of a generation of people that in the last decade or so, we've kind of all come up together, and it's been cool to see where people's careers go and all of that. But yeah, LA is a great place to be, and I think certainly when you're starting out as a filmmaker, it is good to have a presence there. But that's not a one size fits all statement. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of great filmmakers who really never. I think the Coen brothers never came to LA, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those things where I think that the question gets tired, but everybody has such a drastically different experience of how they break into the industry or how they get started or whatever they're working on, that it really, it's eye-opening, to see everybody's different paths. So as often as you hear that sort of question or that, question at the end of the conversation, which is what are you doing next? It's like those questions really, have to be asked. And it's fascinating to hear everybody's journey, honestly. Coming from, as a filmmaker myself, it's like, I just think it's part of the fun, really is seeing how people make it to where they are. And with American Murder, this has got to be a pretty cool story that we're going to get into later on. But before we do have a special drink for tonight. And this is the first time I've done this, and I've did this just for you, Matthew. All right.
Oh God, brace yourself, Matthew.
I love it.
Sorry, skinny pig.
I love it.
All right. And I've never done this before, but I created my own drink for our film tonight.
Wow. We're now liable if somebody drinks too much and kills himself. Well done, Jason.
They might get an alcohol overload sugar rush. That might be about it, but I don't think anybody's gonna die from this one. It's this is on tape. This is what we're gonna play when we have a Netflix documentary about this. Right.
Okay?
Or in the courtroom when they're prosecuting.
Yep.
All right, so I kept it simple. This drink is going to be called the American Murderer. I tried to go with something like a Con Man or something like that, but there's already a drink, so I felt like the title of your film is pretty unique, and so we just stuck with that, the American Murderer. All right. So what's in this drink? I don't know what it is that you like to drink, Matthew, but I do know that in the film, Jason is seen multiple times downing some shots of vodka.
Yes, that's true.
So much vodka.
So I'm not sure if that was a Jason Brown staple or if that's something you came up with just script writing or if that's maybe your choice of drink or whatever it is. But our drink for tonight is based on vodka. All right. So we've got 2 ounces of Tito's vodka, 3/4 ounces of orange juice, a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup, a 1/2 ounce of cream, and a 1/2 ounce of God damn it. Excuse my language. I always am going to mess up a title or somebody's name. 1/2 ounce of Godiva chocolate liqueur. All right.
Wow.
So this is a treat.
You don't know what it's called. How are we supposed to make it?
I know what it is, and that's the important thing.
I love this. This drink feels very.
Why is he cream in it?
I don't know. Just let it run.
Matthew, don't let him do this. He's making you liable as well by calling it the name of your film. Just so you know, you're going down with this ship.
I know. Well, I don't have the rights to do that's our distributor.
We can retract that later on.
I'm sure they'll want commission on that merch.
Full disclosure, it's completely not our fault.
I love it.
All right. How you make this drink is you fill a whiskey glass halfway with ice, pour in 2 ounces of vodka, 3/4 ounce of orange juice, 1/2 ounce of simple syrup, a 1/2 ounce of cream, and you stir the ingredients. Then you're going to top it with the chocolate liqueur. All right. So it's like a silky sweet, but also a very strong kind of sipping drink. And it would be more of like a dessert kind of thing. And the reason why I put this together like this is because Jason Brown just seems like a party animal. in this film, and he's super over the top and crazy, and apparently enjoys life quite a bit, but also seems to enjoy taking it. I don't know, but we'll get into that in just a little bit, folks. But before we do, we're going to check out the trailer for Matthew's film, American Murderer.
This is our prime suspect, Jason Derek Brown. Tough to say where he might be headed at this point. We should see what kind of trail this guy leaves us pretty soon.
Just not the Jason I know.
He's a con man, Melanie. Plain and simple.
I need to speak with Jason.
My brother's dead.
Kid quadruple
Diagnosed.
Now, I know you know Jason, and I know he's been here recently.
Got a little opportunity.
80 grand, 3 days.
I'm gonna rob an armored truck, and I want you to help me.
That's above your pay grade.
Is that a no, mommy?
You're never gonna find him.
You sure about that?
I'm sure you'll figure something out.
Is there any part of that brain of yours that could just tell you to stop?
He won't get away with this.
One man against a loaded gun.
Tell me, where is your brother? And do not lie to me.
You kill that man!
I always tell you the truth. You know that.
How do I look? Deadly?
Good answer.
So hey, Carly, why don't we take a break and listen to an ad from one of our sponsors?
Have you ever found yourself looking at your Netflix homepage and wondering what to watch next?
Or have you sat through a movie trailer and were still on the fence about whether or not you wanted to see the film?
Join me, Pete Mitchell.
And join me, Ethan Hunt, on Films and Stuff, where we recap and review the latest movies and television shows available for you to watch anywhere.
We do the hard work of watching a ton of movies and shows so that we can help you figure out what's worth watching.
We give our recommendations about whether a film or show is worth watching or not.
New episodes of Films and Stuff are released every Monday and are available wherever you get your podcasts or at filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Subscribe now.
Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.
All right, guys, we're back and we're going to keep talking about this film. All right, folks, that was the trailer for American Murderer. It's an upcoming American true crime drama film written and directed by Matthew Gentile. Did I get that right that time? All right.
Third time's a charm.
Matthew Gentile.
Oh,
In his feature directorial debut, it stars Tom I'm going to screw his name up too. He's an amazing actor, though. Tom Pelphrey.
oh, for God's sake, please apologize in advance.
I try. Tom Pelphrey. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's right.
Oh, great. Hi. See, Carly? First time's a charm.
Woohoo! 3 series in, you got name right.
And Ryan Phillippe. Did I get that name right?
That's a complicated one. Just take it.
Right? Right.
It's Phillippe.
Phillippe. All right. Now, this is an interesting film because it is based on a true story. And it's a true story that happened quite a while ago, but it's also recently become back into mainstream media because of one particular aspect of this story. And that's that when this happened, this gentleman Jason Brown ended up being on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, and just recently was pulled off the list and replaced by someone else. But before we get into all that, Carly is going to do her famous in a nutshell synopsis. And now it's time for Carly's super famous in a nutshell synopsis.
The most excitable chap in cinema, with a hairstyle that encapsulates the millennium, smirks and swindles his way into an exotic nightmare.
An exotic nightmare.
Wow.
Did you like that?
I loved it. God.
There we go.
I should have you doing my promotion.
Get me, and tell you what, I'll sink you very fast. You have to have somebody in charge to take the microphone off me because I don't know when to stop. As if you probably guessed that. So I'll get everybody hyped up and I'll be like, yeah, let's go. And then I'll start giving spoilers left, right and centre. So as long as you've got somebody to go, cut the mic, shut her up, then yes, I'm there.
Yeah. Well, it's a tricky movie with spoilers because, everyone who watches the trailer or reads an article about it will know that Jason Derek Brown is still missing, and if more people watch this movie, as Ryan Phillippe said yesterday in our press interviews, more people watch this movie, we may catch him.
Right.
And it's wild to think that, right? But, it is a tough movie with spoilers because it's called American Murderer and there's a murder. But, my feeling is always if you know everything about Jason Derek Brown or if you know nothing about Jason Derek Brown, which is where I assume most people in the world are, I think you can enjoy it either way, spoilers or not. So, I try to avoid some spoilers, but at the end of the day, sometimes they cannot be avoided. Anyways, that was a beautiful introduction. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You are free to use that on anything that won't give people heart attacks or kill people, because I'm not liable for that because I don't have any money.
Great.
Always looking out for yourself, Carly.
Yeah, because you sell me under the river for a bottle of gin.
Multiple rivers if I can get away with it.
I know. You've cut the body parts up. Like, how much can we get for this? I know your game, Jason. I've known it for a long time.
Oh, fingers and toes, there's lots of parts to sell, so.
They're worth nothing because I burnt my fingerprints on.
Oh my gosh. They can't identify you then. Even better.
That's it. Listen, I've been watching Making a Murderer. I'm basically a detective and a lawyer, so watch out. I'll find this guy.
That's the thing with true crime these days, right? Everybody feels like a detective in a way.
I do feel very empowered. I feel like I need to go and get a little board with string and be like, right, I've got the movie, shot by shot. Where is he? I'm going to find him. Right.
And when you take a movie like American Murderer, that is based on something that happened in 2004. This is a story that if you're around and you remember this, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I know that story. What more could I get out of this film? Right. It's the same thing. I have this argument with Carly about the movie Titanic. And my argument with that film is always the boat sinks. What's the point of watching the movie? Right. But it's a great love story. And as that's the reason why people love watching it, right? Carly, of course, likes Titanic 2, which we won't talk about. But
I know there's one Titanic. On the subject of Titanic,
oh yeah, there was.
I didn't know there was
Titanic.
On the subject of Titanic, though, even though I know we're here to talk about noir, so of course we start off by talking about the lead noirish film ever, Titanic.
Welcome to the podcast.
Which I love, by the way. The funny thing about Titanic is, and me and my producer, Kevin Mattis, we talked about this, that no matter what happens, every time I watch Titanic, when it starts, if it's on TV or something, I pick it up 20 minutes in or whatever. That moment when the Celine Dion song comes, right? And they're holding each other over the water, doing their fucking thing, right? And the camera swirls them in the sunlight, right? And it's the most ridiculous thing ever, but it's beautiful and it works, even though it's cheesy and it's great. Right?
Yeah.
You watch it, and I every time forget the ship is going to sink. I do. I'm so swept, and I'm like, oh, things are so great for these two. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's right. The boat's going to hit the iceberg. So fuck. And that just speaks to what a good filmmaker and screenwriter James Cameron is, because he really knows how to. I mean, I'm personally more of a big. I mean, I love a lot of his movies. I love pretty much all his movies. I actually think the guy kind of doesn't miss. Mm-hmm. He's one of those rare filmmakers, but I love his. Like Terminator 1, Terminator 2 is more my thing than the later stuff. But all of his films are so immersive. They really just hook you along the way. And he knows how to do that. And that's why I think he's, his movies do so well, because he knows how to immerse an audience. And
absolutely.
Anyways. Yeah, that's why I think I forget the Titanic's going to sink every time I watch it. Yeah, every time.
And you know what? You're right, because like even when I'm watching it, which is not often these days, but 20 years ago or whatever, it was like everywhere. It is one of those things where you really don't even think about the boat sinking, but it's like one of those like going into it. Like I always had that weird sort of like mentality, like, but I know what's going to happen, It's just the bitchiness in me.
Same about war films as well, couldn't you, though? Because a majority of war films, either, for example, I'm not saying Pearl Harbor is a good film, but for example, at some point what's going to happen. And with various other war films, what's coming. But you, again, like you said, because you're so sort of like immersed in the characters or that particular small fraction of story, when the big stuff hits that is going to happen, it's like, whoa, hold on a second.
Right.
I can't believe that this is erupting around these characters.
Right. And I think that to segue into American Murderer, that's kind of what you've done here, Matthew, is you told this story in an interesting way, which I know Carly will appreciate because she loves flashbacks. And the way,
oh my God, yes.
The way that you've told this story, utilizing you're really time traveling through the entire movie, right? You go back and forth on many different levels, and it never gets confusing. And I got to give you some major props for that, because when filmmakers do that, generally it really confuses you, and you kind of don't know where you're at, And obviously you got the aids of superimposed titles and whatnot to kind of help them. But I didn't feel like I needed that in your movie, even though that some of them are there. It's like I really did not feel like I needed that, and I thought you did a tremendous job telling the story in that way.
Transition.
Yeah,
thank you so much for saying
that is such a big compliment as well, because all Jason did for the first year was yell at me about flashbacks. He has only let me keep flashbacks in one film, and that's Room 19, and that's only because he can't argue with me until it eventually gets like past the point of filming and to the editing suite, and that's when he's going to take them all out. So you've done really well.
Well, thank you. It's first of all, it's a big compliment, so thank you. The fun thing about writing a screenplay, I'm sure you guys have maybe heard this adage. Michael Arndt compares it to climbing a mountain blindfolded. Mm-hmm. For me, when I write, I used to be big into outlining. I'm not anymore. I really now, I just my process is very chaotic, and I just dive in. I start writing.
That sounds just like Carly.
Yeah,
I kid you not. Like I'm the planner
Matthew,
and outlining.
You are becoming my favorite person ever very quickly.
Well, because look, I understand structure. It's important, but I just find that if I outline for too long, I just will find reasons to not actually write.
Yeah, or you lose the essence of what you were trying to do originally.
Exactly. So, for me, with American Murderer, the first drafts of the script, though, actually were quite linear. And there weren't any flashbacks. They actually were all with Jason and with his point of view. So it was kind of like that year leading up to the murder and the robbery and the car heist and the climax, and that was it. And it was a much leaner script. It was like 85 pages, and that was the script that was optioned by these two companies, Traveling Picture Show and GG Films. And when it started to get into the process where I had optioned it and we were getting ready to take it, we were trying to get into the place where you could take it to actors. I developed it for about a year with these people, and these producers were really valuable to me because they ultimately, it was my first time really writing a script and getting notes, right, and getting feedback. And it was one producer in particular on the team, Kevin Madison, who said to me, he was like, if you want to go Like, because he noticed I was a little afraid of time jumps and flashbacks. He was like, I was like, yeah, I'd like to show this part from his childhood, but I don't know. I don't want to do a cheesy, lame Lifetime flashback, right? Or I was like, I want to show this incident that happened with his sister, but I don't know. Like, I want to keep the train moving. And he was like, why are you afraid of going back? Just go back. People do it all the time. People, and especially, today audiences have become so sophisticated.
Yeah.
And, we talk about film noir, I think arguably the quintessential film noir, certainly the first of its kind, one of my all-time favorite movies, Double Indemnity, opens with that incredible like en medias res opening, right? And then the whole thing is told in flashbacks.
Yeah.
Right. So, and now since 1944, audiences have become like used to just going back and forth as if sideways.
Your film relies so heavily on it, but again, you did such a great job in the telling of it that it really felt seamless. It's one of the very few instances that I can recall that does it so well.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think part of what it is, if I, can speak to that, it's really treating the audience like they're smart. I think that's kind of the important thing, right? Because a lot of when I get frustrated watching a movie, it's because a movie's like over explaining stuff to me. Mm-hmm. Like, and by the way, when I wrote when I first was trying the flashbacks, I would even write in the script in like big bold letters. I was so concerned that they'd get confused. I'd be like, this is a flashback,
Oh like, my God, I do that.
And my producers even said to me, and other people would read it, were like, okay, I get it. You just go back. We'll figure it out, because the audience can put 2 and 2. That's a Billy Wilder quote where he says, let the audience add 2 + 2 and they'll love you forever.
Right.
Right. It's like
that is so refreshing to hear, because everybody for years, I don't know what your experience was and what Jason's was, but for years I got, no, you're making it too complicated. People won't get it. Yeah, but I can't spoon feed people because that's when it becomes stupid and unnatural and ridiculous. And for years it was just until I met Jason, to be honest, it was such a battle of just not spoon feeding people. Like I'm watching things. I get it. How do you not get it? Why are you assuming that the mass market is stupid? So it's so nice to hear a filmmaker that's like, actually, people can get it. And if they don't get it, they don't get it. But most people will.
Right.
Yeah, and audiences, they're smart. They're really sophisticated. They, because again, what they're watching today, the series, the movies, it's come a long way. And so, yeah, I think that, look, transitions have to be guided, right? And clear and cohesive and all of that. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you trust that the audience is going to put 2 and 2 together. You guide them as best as you can, but you could take them places I think they don't expect because they want to be. They want to be played with. They want to, they want to put 2 and 2 together. They want to solve the mystery.
So, hey, Carly, why don't we take a break and listen to an ad from one of our sponsors?
Picture it. It's 2004. You just put on your orange Fanta-flavored lip smackers, zipped up your low-rise jeans, and are about to ask your mom for a ride to the movie theater to go watch A Cinderella Story. I'm Mo.
And I'm Christina, and we are the hosts of Movies That Raised Us,
a late 90s and 2000s podcast that dives into your favorite nostalgic movies.
We're talking Princess Diaries, The Click, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen.
We're sick of great movies being ripped to shreds by critics.
I firmly believe that Uptown Girls deserves more than a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And Jamie Lee Curtis deserved a daytime Emmy for her Activia commercial.
We love movies that we can watch over and over again.
They make us laugh, make us want to travel the world, and make us grateful that we didn't have a coach dad a la Troy Bolton.
So join us for a virtual sleepover every Wednesday where we deep dive into montages,
unrealistic expectations,
chunky highlights,
role models,
and the movies that raised us.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show.
I think what's fun about American Murder, what I was trying to fashion it after, was, films that really unfold in front of you. A lot of movies nowadays, you go to them and it's called something very simple, right? And it's what it is. You know what you're getting for your ticket.
Right.
And so you walk out of the theater feeling a little cheated because you're like, okay, so I watched Car Heist 5 and it was just a car heist and there wasn't really much to it. And I kind of knew at the end they'd get caught, right? Or, the good guy would get away and the bad guy would go down. I'm doing this to not out any movies that are out right now. But that's kind of what they do, right? And I think part of the fun of films, like you look at the movie, one of the movies that made me want to be a filmmaker was Pulp Fiction, right? I'm not alone in saying that. Like every filmmaker my age probably more or less would say something like that. Pulp Fiction, Tarantino and Kubrick. But watching Pulp Fiction for the first time, you watch that movie and you have no clue where it's going. You're like, what is this movie what journey is this going to take me on?
Right.
And that's something I think Tarantino proved when he made that movie back in the early 90s, that you can really break the rules. You can go places, but you have to know why you're doing it. And you have to be careful about why you're doing it. Because I kind of try to live by two rules. Don't bore an audience and don't confuse them. And, with an American, and if you are going to confuse them, because you never want to bore them, if you are going to confuse them, you have to kind of know why you're confusing them, right. And it's an interesting thing, but yeah, that with American Murder, we were really trying to, take you on this journey with Jason and show you this exotic nightmare, as Carly said. And really bring you through that world and see the world through his eyes. So it was, we had to kind of take you around in many different directions.
I think that's why Carly and I haven't quite made it in the industry, is because we love confusing people.
We confuse each other. That's the problem. We start off with we know where we're going, and then we just confuse each other and end up confusing the audience even more.
Really got to dig in and
we've not done too bad. I think there's a lot of people thinking, though, there's a lot of people where they'll watch a film and go, oh, I wish the ending had been this. I saw this coming. Like you said, if you treat them stupid, they can come up with a better ending. And then they think, why am I watching this?
Absolutely.
So it's quite immersive. The film that you've done it actually sets people off to go, I'm going to explore more. I've seen this aspect. I want to learn more about this. It's almost like an investigation.
I want to time travel for a minute.
Exactly.
I want to go back in time to this concept short film that you made for American Murderer. I'm assuming this is okay to talk about?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Because it was also just as engaging. Very well done. And it starred Jonathan Groff, which was really cool. He's a great actor as well. So you shot this concept trailer. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, where did how did you come about wanting to do that? Was that a part of the AFI sort of venture, or was this separate after?
It was not. I'll give you the quick American Murder origin story that will lead into the proof of concept. That played.
Okay, cool.
So to give you some background, when I was 14, before I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be an FBI agent. So I basically wanted to be Ryan's character in the movie.
Wow.
And I used to go on the FBI's, .gov website. I'd look at the top 10 fugitives to see if, I don't know, maybe young juvenile Matthew could help them catch a fugitive. And, when you looked at this list of fugitives at the time, it was really a sea of mean, menacing faces. Like you had Osama bin Laden and Whitey Bulger and really criminal mastermind geniuses, right, who were really elusive to the feds. And then on this giant list, you had a guy with spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, a charismatic con man surfer dude who just didn't seem from the picture alone to fit the profile. So I was immediately struck by this guy's face, by Jason's face and his look and the red hoodie and the blue background. Like the image just stayed in my mind, So cut to many years later. I'm graduating film school at the AFI. I have frontman and lawman behind me. I'm trying to figure out, what is my first feature? What does that look like? And all of a sudden, I'm one day drawing out storyboards for, a a shoot I was doing, and I had a true crime documentary on in the background. And then all of a sudden, Jason Derek Brown's face popped on the television. And I saw it, and immediately I remembered seeing it when I was 14 years old, wanting to be an FBI agent. It just came running back to me.
That's like fate.
So, and it was like fate, because everyone was asking me, what's your first feature, Matthew? What's your first feature? What's it going to be? What does it look like? And I really didn't have an answer. And then all of a sudden the picture came, and I turned up the volume and I started to watch it, and I said to myself, like, this would be a really cool movie. Like, here's, the documentary that was on was American Greed. And they were interviewing like Lance Leising, who Ryan plays. They were interviewing people who knew him, people who loved him. And I saw right away this guy was fascinating, because not only was he this had this kind of look, right, of like a frat boy or, a certain kind of guy who I usually probably would avoid. But, he had this clear magnetic personality, and a thing that drew people in. But he meant so many different things to so many different people. Like to, this one woman, he was a lover, right? To another person, he was a scoundrel, right? To Lance Leising's character, he was like a guy, just an idiot who got lucky, right? And to some people, he was like a con man who was 3 steps ahead. So he always kind of had he meant so many different things. I just became really fascinated by the story. So I decided to have a go at it and write the script, on spec, meaning on my own time and on my own dime, just figure out how to do it. And at the time, to pay my bills, I was working as a script reader. So, I kind of had this dual education going, where I'd be reading scripts for this company and, giving writers notes and feedback. And then I'd be working on my own. Right. And I kind of was splitting my day between those. And, all while putting my short films out there and trying to get them seen and, all of that. So I was really, hustling to get this movie off the ground. And as I was struggling to get American Murderer read by people, the one thing I did have was, at the time, Jonathan Groff was interested in doing it and unofficially attached to it. He was really interested in the role. He had read my script and really responded to it. So we were, I was trying to kick it around, but it was hard. I wasn't getting the bites I hoped for or wanted. People just weren't really reading it. And that's something for, any aspiring screenwriters out there. It can be hard to get your scripts read, because in this industry, and I know this because I worked at a talent agency before I went to AFI, every executive, every person, every agent's assistant even, right, has like 10 scripts they have to read that weekend. So you kind of got to fight your way through.
Yeah, they're only going to find one reason to put it down and move on.
To get read. Yeah. Right. So it's a complex, tricky thing. Right. And, getting your work out there. And so I met at a couple companies, and I was very lucky that one guy came up to me when I met at a company. I met with these 3 executives, and they were like, "This sounds really cool. Yeah. Send us it when you're ready." And the guy, I was walking the elevator, and the guy runs up to me. He says, "Hey man, look, I like you, and I think you're talented, but I got to tell you, they're not going to read your script. Like, they're not that excited about it." And I was like, okay. Well, thanks. And he was like, no, look, I'm telling you, here's what you got to do. You got to go make a proof of concept short of the script. You got to shoot one scene from it to show people what it looks like. And I was like, thanks, but I did just make 2 shorts that played all these festivals, won all these awards. Why do I need to make another short if I have the short, the script, and Jonathan attached? And he was like, well, you've proven that you can direct. The shorts show that, but you haven't shown that you can direct this. And you need to show that. And the guy was 10,000,000% right. Like, he was totally, completely accurate. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wow. And I walked out of that building saying to myself, I need to go make a proof of concept short. So I call up Jonathan and I'm like, hey, would you do a proof of concept short with me? And he was like, that sounds cool. What's a proof of concept short? I'm like, a proof of concept short is this movie Whiplash did it, and none of them, and Sling Blade and all of them, it's a tool to get funding. And so he said, okay, great. And we shot that one scene. We did it in a day, I think in like early 2018. And we went out, we shot it. And that came out right around the time that Jonathan's Joe Mindhunter was really taking off and heating up. So at that point in time, a lot of people were very interested in seeing, in reading the script. And I had a few different companies approach me and read the script, and some of them wanted to do the script, but they didn't want me. to direct it. And so they wanted to kind of take my script, and I was like, thanks, friend, we'll take it from here. And I said no to those because I really wanted to direct it. I knew that that's why I'd written it.
Good
so I wasn't going to let that happen. Thank you. It was a hard decision at the time, even though it wasn't that much money, but it was still money. And at the time I was reading scripts. So,
well, I mean, when you have something that's your baby, you know what I mean? I feel like sometimes, I mean, they must realize it, but I feel like there's not a full realization about how that is, just like taking your baby away. And I don't mean that figuratively. It really feels that way. So props.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm happy for you.
Yeah. At the time it looked like a hard decision, but in retrospect, it wasn't, because then pretty shortly after, it was like a few months of like what I call the dark night of the soul in screenwriting. Then finally these two companies kind of came around at the same time. It was GG Films and Traveling Picture Show. Kevin Matisow, Carissa Buffel, Gia Walsh. They kind of converged on me at the same time. And they, banded together and they said, hey, let's do this. Let's make this movie and you can direct it. And they, thank God for those guys, because they really stuck their necks out for me and raised the financing and, got it so that I could do the film, make it the way I wanted to.
Right.
And, once it went through that process, but, to answer your question, I realized this was a very long way of answering it.
That's great.
The proof of concept short was really a calling card for the screenplay. That's ultimately what it was. And then, when we did this, you've seen the movie and the short. So, the way we did the scene kind of changed, right? Like we didn't do it the same way, but that's because, the script had evolved in that time, because between the proof of concept and day one of principal photography, it was about 2.5, 3 years. So it had been a while. Right. And the story had evolved and my style had evolved. So, things had changed for sure, but that proof of concept. It was definitely the first big, I guess what you would call a leap into the unknown, right? Because I didn't know that proof of concept would necessarily get the movie, into the right in people's hands, which thankfully it did.
Well, I think the quality of it as well, I mean, helped a lot. I mean, plenty of people shoot proof of concepts that go nowhere. So, hey, Carly, why don't we take a break and listen to an ad from one of our sponsors?
You're into Netflix original films. If you appreciate unpretentious movie reviews, and if you're the kind of person who knows that despite our political differences, we can unite over the love of a good movie or the abject loathing of a terrible one, then we might just have the podcast for you.
Really thought we talked about not saying it like that.
Like what?
Okay, anyway, the podcast is called Watching Netflix Without You. And to listen, you can visit our website for a list of podcast players, WNWYpodcast.com/subscribe.
Seriously, like what?
I swear to God.
All right, guys, we're back and we're going to keep talking about this film. You have a defining style, and I'm not even sure if maybe you know this, but as I watched Lawman and Frontman and this proof of concept, and I can see this very specific thing that you do, which is really interesting. Not only the long floating tracking shots that you do, but you're very good at creating a world with depth, not only with utilizing the camera, but also with background action. There's a few great shots where you see, like in Frontman, with the he picks up the guitar and walks around. You see the window out in the back, and you see somebody out doing the pool work, right? And it's very similar to the shot
wow.
With
it's been so long since I've seen those.
It's really great. It's really it's really I don't know if it's a trademark or anything or whatever it is, or if it's intentional, but it's really I can see that through line style of yours throughout each of these pieces that I've seen of yours already. With that shot, and then you do something very similar with the proof of concept, where his sister's in the kitchen and she spills the bottle of wine, and then you see the SWAT team come in the backyard, which is super subtle but so effective. And it's really great. And you know, it's to be such a young filmmaker with, you know, this, I don't want to say small body of work, 'cause I know you've been at this for a long time, but these pieces of quality work that you have, and being able to see that, that elevated ability of directing already in what you're doing is just, it's classy, and it's just great to see. So
thank you. That's very, very insanely kind to say.
Well, it's the truth. And I think anybody that's really kind of paying attention to those would be out of their mind to deny you of being able to direct that movie.
Well, you know, I mean,
the thing is as well, I'm not very technical, and I'm not very good with stuff like that, but even I could see that, because Jason, don't yell at me.
Yeah.
But you know, like in so you know how like John Wick, for example, creates a world within a scene? Like the entire world of John Wick is like, it's always been there, and it's real from the first film. And that's because every scene is kind of whole. Like there's thousands of people in the background, or there's one person, but everybody's immersed in that world. And that's why I like it so much. And I actually found that with your film. It was, I felt like I was immersed in it, because it was like a world within a scene every 2 minutes, because the characters were they were doing normal things, and then you had other characters in the background doing their things like life.
And it didn't feel fake.
So
That's
it made it more natural. Right. No, not at all. It felt so natural and like fluid.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, you know, because background's hard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's a hard thing to get right. And, you know, fortunately for me, I'm lucky in many ways, but, you know, on American Murder, I've been fortunate to have really great first assistant directors, because they really, those are the guys and women who really do the background, right? You know, I mean, as a director, you're coordinating all of it, right? And you're designing the shots, but, you know, you need a great first AD to help you with that. And in my case, I had Evan Lyhip, who was the first AD in Utah. He was absolutely spectacular. You know, he's younger than I am, and he was like, you know, running the set, right? Yeah. And he was just he's a prodigy first AD. He was amazing.
Congratulations to him, because that's it.
Jason,
the work has been.
Yeah, this other guy named Jason Allen, he did all my other shorts, Frontman, Lawman. And he was the first, that's the first AD I worked with, who was like on a professional level, DGA and all that. And he taught me a lot too. Great guy, and, you know, friend. And yeah, so now first AD, the director first AD relationship is actually arguably one of the most important on set. You know, you could argue it's a cinematographer, you could argue it's the lead actor, you could argue it's the actors of the day, right? Whoever they are, supporting or day players. But, you know, ultimately the director and first AD, I mean, that relationship and symbiosis, and producers too, but first AD is so key, because they're the ones who are really helping you make your day and make sure you get everything you want. And having a first AD who is on the side of the director, which is the case with Evan and Jason, right? Because they're the ones telling you, hey, you might not have time to get all those shots. I know you have 12 shots planned, but you're probably only going to get 8. They're the ones who will tell you, but they're problem solvers. And that's what directing is 90% of the time. It is just problem solving. You know, it's like, okay, we had 6 shots here, but you can't get, you know, there was a great talk with Jonah Hill about working with Martin Scorsese on The Wolf of Wall Street. And it was on Howard Stern of all shows. And Howard Stern said, you know, why is he so good? Like, why is Scorsese the best? And Jonah Hill said, the man constantly solves problems. Like, he's a chess master. And he could solve problems in like 2 seconds. Like, most people might take a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. He can do it in like 2 seconds. He's like, nope, that will do that. Then we'll do, you know, okay, you gotta shut the car door, move that way, go that way. All right, we'll put the camera here instead, you know? And because he's been doing this for so long, he's just able to solve so many problems. And I think that speaks to what you were talking about, camera movement and blocking and all that. You know, one exercise I did, and again, if this podcast has a big base of aspiring filmmakers, which I assume people listening to a film noir podcast are, you know, one exercise I did at AFI, because my belief is, and you know, I think that, you know, there's often, I'm going to be unoriginal again, steal a quote from someone, but Ira Glass used to say that there is a gap. You have your taste, right, which is awesome. Your taste is Kurosawa, Billy Wilder, you know, Scorsese, whoever, right? And then there's where you are in your work, right? And your work is down here and your taste is up there, and there's a big gap.
Right.
And so what Ira Glass says is the only way to close the gap, right? The only way to make that gap go away is to just do tons of work, right? Just be prolific, because if you do a lot of work, you'll get better and you'll get better and you'll become more second nature to you, and you'll just do it. And for me, one exercise I did that really helped me feel, because when I first came to AFI, I was terrified of the camera. I kind of came from more of a theater background. I knew a lot about actors. I was more confident in that. And I was more confident with writing, because I kind of, I loved writing as a kid. I loved writing short stories and plays and putting them on. So the acting and the writing part didn't scare me as much, but camera, I was like such a rookie. Like I knew nothing. And what I felt was our teacher gave us this assignment called a single shot master. And you all could do this with your friends on a weekend, where you would just literally take an iPhone, take a scene from a great movie, like say Chinatown, right? Get 2 actors and stage the scene and shoot it all in one take, no cuts, right? So you block and you shoot according to the camera. And the requirement of the class was to do 1. But after I did 1, it made me feel better that I just started doing more. And I started doing them once a week. Then that became twice a week. And by the end of the school year, I think I did 100. And I would just keep sending them to this teacher. I'd be like, here you go, here you go, here you go. And he loved it. I thought I was annoying him at one point, but he was like, nope, it's great. I had a Matthew Gentile Film Festival this weekend. And by the end of that, because in year 1 at AFI, you make 3 short films that nobody really sees. And they're kind of like a training ground for you. Like, you're hitting you're hitting balls in the batting cage, right? You're getting them out. And then finally, your thesis film's like one you make the next year. That's what and I got to say the improvement because my first films at AFI were not very good. If you saw them, you would be like, yeah, this guy could learn some things, right? But the improvement from the first year to the second year was tremendous. And I can only attribute that to just constantly doing it again and again and again. And, and working with great people. I'm fortunate that I have an amazing cinematographer, right? Clelia Robinson, who's like just she's my partner in crime. I call her my work wife. She's really, and she is brilliant, and she can see what I'm going for and can rein me in and tell me when I'm like, no, Matthew, I don't have a crane. I can't do that. Right. But we can figure out this way. So it's always that. And the other thing I think you're speaking to is, and this goes back to what this podcast is called, is I'm very, very, very influenced by noir, and I'm very influenced by old film, classic Hollywood. So for me, like my heroes, in addition to the ones I've talked about today, are like Kurosawa, Billy Wilder, filmmakers of Michael Curtiz, Howard Hawks, filmmakers who worked in a system where, it wasn't about just shooting tons of coverage. Right. And I don't think coverage is a dirty word. I love Werner Herzog.
Hey, it can save you, so it's,
I'm not against it. I'm not against it as a concept. I think most scenes do need some coverage, right? Sure. But I think that, there is an overdependence. They call it garbage dump directing, where it's like, okay, first shot, wide shot, close up, we're done, and like the classic Hollywood directors were so good. And keep in mind, those guys, John Ford, all of them, like they shot so many movies. They were shooting 3 movies a year, like 3 features a year. Nowadays, if a director makes 1 movie every 5 or 6 years, It's like, oh my God, they're so prolific because of how hard it is to get movies made today. But like they were shooting, these guys like John Ford, William Wyler, even like they were just like constantly cranking them out. And that's why their craft was so outrageous, and disgustingly good. And, but I study those a lot. And so in blocking and shooting, I try to be economical. And I kind of always, I do ask myself, what's the TCM way to do this? Me and my editor say that a lot. We'll be like, the TCM way is to stay in the master a little longer, but, it's a balance, it's always a balance, and you're always learning and you're always studying from old masters and new masters, right? Who inspire you. But yeah.
And, a lot of that, I'm assuming for you, as with most filmmakers, comes together in the editing room as well. I mean, you can plan as much as you can plan. But sometimes you see things in the editing room that can completely change the perspective. And talking about like the junk filmmaking, sometimes, you've written a scene a certain way and then you approach it completely different in an editing room. Did you happen to see any sort of opportunities like that when you got into the editing room with American Murderer?
Yeah, you know, I mean, there were definitely, you know, I mean, I think a good movie, often when I hear about the process of how it was made, they say a good movie tends to evolve, right? Like very rarely, I haven't heard many stories where someone says like, I wrote the film, I shot it exactly as it was written, you know, nothing really changed on set. And then we got to the editing room and we just cut it, put it together, and we were done.
Sure.
You know, like, I talked to so many filmmakers. I don't think I've ever.
I'd be like, that would be an amazing story if you heard that one.
You know, yeah, that was
Oh my God, that's what we wanted for Dark Winter.
Right. You know, yeah, no, film is that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
You know, Hitchcock famously shot his storyboards.
Absolutely.
But you know, film is a process of, for me at least, it's a process of discovery.
Right.
You know, I planned this movie out very meticulously. I fortunately had a lot of time, you know, to figure out how to rob this bank. And, you know, because, you know, we went to cast movie in March 2020. We shot in December of that year.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know in March of 2020 when my start date was, but I was acting like it was, you know, 4 weeks from then.
Right.
And so the finish line kept getting pushed away from me. But as that kept getting pushed, I just kept prepping.
Good.
And I worked really closely with my team, my cinematographer, my editors, right? And we were mapping out every shot. We were storyboarding the whole thing. We were pre-visualizing. I mean, we were really, you know, getting this thing down to a T. And so in doing that, like, I had a real thorough plan of everything. However, you know, when we got to set, things change. You know, you go and film a boat party on the water and the wind starts blowing you 40 miles per hour. So you can't go get that shot on the other boat because you only have one boat. Right. Yeah. Or so how do you make that work? Right. And so it's always like that. Or, you know, you had the nightclub scene written in your head that Tom sits down next to the girls. Right. And starts chatting with them, and all your shots were planned around that. But then he comes in and he does this crazy thing where he puts his hands on the ceiling and talks to them the whole time. Right. And just starts riffing. And like, there were versions of that scene that were like 10 minutes long. So he just had so much good stuff, you know, and I will one day probably do a longer cut with everything. No, I won't, because actually I hate those. But the point being that, you know, there was so much cool things, and there was, you know, and it was constantly evolving, and there would be, you know, and it was a tightly planned operation, but at the same time, we were letting things happen. You know, we were letting things go. And I think that's, you know, I asked each actor, because, you know, I was very lucky to get this cast on my first movie. Like, this is not a normal first time feature.
Not at all. Yeah.
Experience, you know, and I've had every press interview I've done has been, wow, what a cast. Right. And that's a big compliment, but, you know, it's like, they're saying it for a reason. It's like, it's not usual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, another thing to that though also is like, they should be saying what a script, because the writing process is what led to that, right?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, the actors have been saying that. I can't say that, but they can.
Do you know what I think so amazing is that, you got Jacki.
Yes.
Jacki Weaver. She oh my God. When I saw her straight away, I went in blind, and I watched the film and I went, no, it's not. And I had to literally pause the film to do my Googling like I do. And I thought, it is, because one of my two favorite recent films, I should say, is Animal Kingdom and Parkland. I love Parkland. And the reason why I love Parkland is for her and James Badgedale. Their performances in that, oh my God, I'm so impressed.
But she's phenomenal. I mean, you know, and you such a career that she's had. I mean, you know, she became famous in this era, right? Back with Animal Kingdom, which was an awesome movie, right? But she's been around for so long. I mean, she's worked. My first discovery of Jacki Weaver were two films, Stork and Picnic at Hanging Rock, the Peter Weir film. You know, so she was really a key figure in the Australian New Wave. I mean, she was like female Al Pacino over there. You know, she really was this, you know, and she's been around for such a long time and has so many great experiences, doing theater and life stories. She's also
And even now in Yellowstone with Kevin Costner, like even now, everything is just like, oh, seen that, love that, seen that, love that.
And by the way, I say this with complete honesty too, the coolest person, like the easiest to work with, the most like, humble. You would never think, that she was a 2-time Oscar nominated actress in a indie film. Like she just was such a pleasure to work with.
That's cool.
I loved every second of working with her. And to think these people would come together, it's pretty crazy. And certainly I felt very lucky.
And my name is Amin.
And we're the hosts of Before and After the Movies. What our podcast is a unique spin on the movie review podcast genre. Typically, you'll just hear a review of the movie, but what we actually do is meet up before we see the movie, give our predictions, talk about the movie in general, and some other things about the movie business. Then we go and see the movie.
After watching the movie, we meet back up again, record a fresh review post-show, comparing predictions and talking about what we thought of the movie.
So for you, it's a nice seamless 5-second transition.
For us, it's a dirty 5-hour work day, but we love every second of it. So check us out on every streaming platform, and here's a little taste of what we have to offer.
It's time!
Okay, out of 10.
3, 2, 1. 8.5.
Family reunion.
Now that's serious, Sandler.
This is Goofy Sandler! Chris O'Donnell. What the fuck is wrong with you? We'll see you guys in 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to the Speakeasy Noir Cast, the show that brings you binge drinking with a side of noir, with your host, Carly Street and Jason D. Morris.
I did a little bit of research on Jason Brown. Because I remember like that happening, but I wasn't very familiar with it, right? And I see the in the movie you put in there that he's expecting this to be like $300,000 that he's stealing, and it ends up only being $56,000. I couldn't find any information on that. Was that something that you just kind of added because it's a total motivator? Like I totally get it at $300,000, like what he's doing. Not that I agree with it, but it's a very funny and deprecating moment in the movie when he opens that bag and he's just like, oh crap,
Right. Well, yeah. I believe, and it has been a while, so apologies to anyone out there in the real world who might be listening to this. I believe an FBI agent, I think Lance Leising, said in an interview that Jason was expecting there to be more money. That was the accounts that they got.
Okay.
Was that Jason thought it was going to be something like 200,000 or 300,000, and it ended up being way less.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing you're talking about because, in the script, when I had written that scene when he sees the money for the first time, slight spoiler alert, when he sees that money and he looked, I actually wrote it that he was laughing and kind of like high on adrenaline from doing it. And Tom, who I think is really just such an excellent actor and a smart actor, kind of looked at me and he said, Matthew, I know it says here that I'm laughing, but I don't think I am. I think, aren't I disappointed? Like, I wanted 300,000. This is all I got. And I was just like, man, this guy is good. He's so dialed in. He totally knows. And I just said, yeah, okay. And I said, look, we could shoot it both ways or we could just shoot it that way. And he was like, cause he was like, oh, no, that's your script, man. I'm not going to, and I was like, no. I was like, look, I think that totally makes sense. And we talked about
it's kind of the turning moment, isn't it? Like I did all this for nothing. Well, not nothing because it's not nothing, but in his head, it's like I did all this for nothing.
Yeah, it's a total adrenaline rush and an addict trying to get a pump, right? It's
kind of funny that you say that though, and talking about how you originally wrote it with him laughing, because I completely see this character that you wrote laughing at that, like 100% in my head. Like he's so unhinged and like, he lives life in this sort of very whimsical, aloof sort of way. I almost feel like it would bother him to a certain extent, but not to like depress him, and that's crazy to think, but I really feel that there's some truth to how you wrote that originally.
Yeah. It is an unhinged character and it's such an unhinged role and so many scenes. And I think that's part of why Tom's performance is so strong because he really got himself
really good.
in a place where as an actor, he's so uninhibited, you know, and free and out of control.
Yeah.
And, you know, actors will have to work very hard to get themselves to that place.
Right.
It's a very, you know, and a director has to help them, you know, give them the sandbox to play that way. But, you know, we talked about it, Tom and I, you know, we're both big fans of Dostoevsky and, you know, Crime and Punishment, right? It's like he does the thing and then he's like, that's all there is, right? And so I think for someone like Jason, you know, there's definitely an argument for both, for sure. But I think at the end of the day, it makes sense the way Tom and I allowed him to do was that he would just be disappointed because, you know, Jason always wants more.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't stop.
Right.
He's always on to the next thing. So he's probably in his mind thinking like, oh, stop. I want, okay, what's the next thing I can do? Right.
Yeah.
And that's just the way his brain works.
Right.
So, yeah.
And speaking of Jason Brown, if this is a what if question, if he came across, he's still out there and he came across this film, how do you think he would react at seeing like this moment of his life?
You know, a lot of people ask me that. And I always say kind of the same thing. It's tough to say because, you know, when I'm not him, I wrote him and I wrote an interpretation of him. But, you know, Jason Derek Brown's the one person I really never got any access to, right? In terms of, you know, at least I never got an interview with Jason Derek Brown. I never saw an interview with him anywhere. So, you know, everything I have of him is records, testimonies, what people said about him, images, some videos he made of himself. So I definitely saw the image he put himself out there, and I created an interpretation of him that Tom Pelphrey took and ran with. You know, so there's so much information I had on Jason that gave me a lot to work with as a filmmaker. But, you know, how he would feel, I don't know. My guess is I think he'd probably have some notes.
That was a perfect answer.
I think he'd probably have some notes. He'd be like, yeah, you know, I didn't quite, you know, the party.
It actually happened like this.
Yeah,
I'll reshoot it for you.
I did more coke than I party, or, you know.
That's
but
funny.
I don't know. I think we captured pretty closely the spirit of who he was.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that's a little arrogant for me to say, but, you know, my feeling is I think we got to the core of who he was and what made him tick, and the people who knew him and the people who loved him and how he had this appeal. I think, you know, my only intention in making the movie was to really show Jason, tell his story through so many different perspectives, right? To give you a full 360-degree view of who he was. And whether you love him, hate him, rooting for him, rooting against him, right? Starting one way and ending another, all that's fine. As long as you can come out of this movie, hopefully being entertained, but also understand him. Because I think that's
understand
the power.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the power of what film and film noir can do, right? When we watch Fred McMurray kill Barbara Stanwyck's husband in Double Indemnity, right? Like, we know that's the wrong thing to do. It's just plain wrong. There's not even a debate about it. But we're kind of along for the ride. Why? Because we understand why he's doing it and we get it. And even though it's tricky and, you know, you kind of, I don't know, for me, when I watch Double Indemnity, I kind of want him to get away and I also don't. You know, I'm in that very much in between. Right. And that's the place I like to be in film. Right. You know, I like to be, you know, I don't really like movies where good and evil is clear. And I think that's what drives us all to crime drama, film noir. Right. You know, the movie that made me want to be a filmmaker ultimately was Dog Day Afternoon.
Nice.
You know, and I was like, I saw it when I was 12 and I just, you know, like I said to my dad after I saw it, I was like, please don't show me any of the kinds of movies and things like this. I don't want to see like, you know, whatever again. Right. Yeah. I don't want to see a Disney movie again. I want more stuff like that. And, you know, because I'm rooting for Sonny, even though he's putting a gun in people's faces, I want him to get on that plane to Algeria every time. I want him and Sal to get on the fucking plane. And they don't. They end up dead and arrested. And you're like, oh, why? But and you're like, yeah, that's right. Of course. They can't get on the plane to Algeria and live whatever. Right.
They did I think that's something wrong. It's you got to pay for it.
Yeah. And that's what I think great film and film noir does.
Yeah. But that's what kind of what's amazing about your film here is that we have that open ending. It feels like a fully complete story. And a lot of times I feel like people, when they get to that end of that movie, those true crime movies, and they see the titles at the end and they're like, oh, that was kind of a letdown. I didn't feel that at all. And I wholeheartedly believe it has to do with how you told the story out of order, that made it feel complete.
I appreciate you
because you don't feel that in a lot of movies that end in that similar way.
Yeah, I think that it gets tricky with these kinds of movies because, like you said, you want people to be engaged. You want people, but you're telling a true story and you have to dramatize it. And to be clear, this is I call this film true crime fiction. So, it is based on a true story. There are a lot of, people who have researched the case and stuff have commented on how they feel it's accurate, which is a great compliment. But there were things I made up. I have to be clear about that. People I did not interview, like I never interviewed Jason's family as a choice to,
that was going to be one of my questions. Like, who did you specifically get to interview? Yeah.
And I don't name the people I interviewed, not because
just out of respect.
I just don't out of respect for them. I don't want to outright, but I didn't interview Jason's family, just to be clear on that. Strictly because I didn't want my take on Jason influenced, because I felt I had a good understanding of him and I didn't want to be tipped one way or the other. But I tried to look at all of them through a very, compassionate and understanding lens. But it was the ending, as you're talking about, I think, look, even though now this is really a spoiler section, guys, so go see the movie and then come back. Right? But, if you watch the film and yes, he gets away. We all know that. Even if you watch the movie or not, he's going to be
right. The boat sinks, guys.
If he's still out there, even though he gets away with the crime, the cost is so dire for him because he has completely eroded his own humanity and lost himself in the process, and basically has to, some people have called that last sequence a suicide because he's cutting himself off from everybody he knows. He's destroying his identity and he's going off into God knows where to go live under another identity.
And as strongly as you've created this character's story, his ties to his family, even the ones that are negative, like with his mother, or his father in a way, which is also a positive for him. You are completely, I mean, that's really the lifeblood. The only reason why he, I think, continues to exist in the normal world is because he has all of these ties to people, right? Even good or bad, right? But then the way that this does end, and I'm assuming extremely similar to the real situation, is he's severed.
I kind of wanted to say as well, though, about the ending. I was really impressed that you did not do a tack on ending, because I've watched so many sort of true crime based on real event stuff. And at the end, when it's unresolved, because I like to have a resolution, and I get annoyed if there isn't a resolution, even if it's nothing to do with, if it's just a story or whatever. And I'm so impressed that you didn't finish that final scene and go, this is what I think, this is where I think he is. And I think that was so powerful in itself. And that's what made me actually really go, wow. Because you didn't tack on your idea after all this research and it being your film. You didn't tack on an ending of what you think either should happen or has happened. You just kind of left it as is.
We didn't do the real picture of Jason either, which some people wanted me to, but I said no.
I mean, you could have easily had, Tom Hardy playing Venom down in Mexico, at the end of this movie. Right. So it's a Marvel crossover. It's totally a good thing, what Carly's bringing up there. It ended well. And again, I think it's really due to the structure of how you told the story. All right. So, getting down to it for the people at home, when and where are people going to be able to check out American Murderer?
American Murderer is now in select theaters, and it will be available on video on demand, digital, on October 28th. You can rent it, stream it on any transactional video on demand platform, iTunes Store, Amazon, Google, YouTube, any of them. Anywhere you can rent a movie, you can rent our movie. Please do. Please watch. Tell your friends. You can follow me on Instagram at Matthew L. Gentile where I'll update things about the movie constantly, or on my website, www.matthewgentiledirector.com. And please come check it out. Watch it if you like film noir. I think it'll be up your alley, and come support an indie film, please.
Even though I've already seen it, I'm going to be in the theater. I think it's worth seeing in the theater. It's such a cool picture. I don't know any other way to describe it other than it's just cool. It's got a cool factor to it. It's a phenomenal cast. And it's just very well directed. I really love how you put together the timeline of everything. It's really great.
Thank you so much.
I do want to say, like, I need to ask you that question, like, what's next for you? But I want to precurse it with, I hope a feature version of Lawman is in order. I thought it was phenomenal, and I loved how you took Lance Reddick and you flipped his sort of type of character, the stereotype that they put him in, and you put him in a character that's completely different than what we've really seen him before. And it's just a great idea for a film, also based on a true story. So I really hope that that's something that's going to be in your future at some point.
Well, thank you for saying that about Lawman. I would love to tell that story again. Right now they're doing a TV show.
Oh, really?
Taylor Sheridan. There's a lot of Bass Reeves stories out there. And there is one story in particular that I love about Bass Reeves. At the end of his career, had to go arrest his own son.
Oh, wow.
And I always thought that would make it for a really great movie.
Yeah.
I have a few projects in front of that, but I do juggle a few at once. I'm right now working on the screenplay for my second feature, which is called The Socialite. And it is another true crime thriller about a socialite who had her ex-husband killed in a car bombing in 1996. So if you liked American Murder, I think it's very similar. It has a very much of a body heat, Double Indemnity, American Hustle vibe. So
very cool.
I think that one's going to be really fun, and that's my next film I have, following up this one with. And I have a lot of true crime films also that I'm set to do. So that's the genre I'm sticking for now. And Lawman counts as true crime.
Yeah,
right.
definitely.
So, I wouldn't put it past, but it's it's challenging because when Taylor Sheridan's doing something, I'm probably going to stick. But I may need to let his show pass, and then I can try.
Right. In time. Hopefully we see it come from you.
The story.
Yeah. I mean, you did such a great job on Lawman, like the short you did. It's just, I really truly want to see more. And Lance Reddick is just great in it too.
Well, that was the same cinematographer, by the way.
Great. Yeah. Everything about it was just pitch perfect. Yeah.
And she's the one who really championed that story. She wanted to tell that story for years.
Nice.
Brought me into her team, and then she became my DP.
Very cool. So Matthew,
I want to give it some gins.
Right.
Some gins.
Yeah, what we do is we rate the films that we watch, and instead of doing 5 stars out of 10, we do gin bottles, right? Because it's the speakeasy, and Carly's in love with gin. And so we do a rating score based on gin bottles, how many Carly has drank and how drunk she is. Typically, that doesn't really that doesn't reflect her love of the film or not. So it's all good. All right, Carly, you're up. You're up first, and let's go to this movie. All right.
Good. So you're going to be impressed with me, Jason, because I'm giving this dramatic music that you can put in there. That's crap, but whatever. 10 gins out of gins. And do you want to know the reason why?
I do. I really do.
Because I absolutely detest female characters. Matthew, as Jason will attest, I hate writing them. I hate watching them. I hate casting them. I hate everything about them because they're so interchangeable. And my mind is wired a little bit differently, so I can't write them. I struggle to read them. No. But in your film, actually, I really loved Jamie. And it's quite deceptive because she doesn't actually have as much screen time as you think that she does. But all the characters that you created made you feel like you're involved more. Like nobody was interchangeable to me. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love so much about it. And that's obviously a credit to not only the acting, but also the script. Like no character could have been picked up, took out, and thrown away.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, credit to Jamie. I think goes also to Chantal Van Zandt. I think she just did an incredible job.
Yeah.
But thank you for saying that. And 10 gins, okay, that's a lot.
10 gins.
But come on, Carly, you got to give me.
I'm going to be in a coma.
You got to give me something to work off.
I'm in a coma.
Yeah, right. Hey, you're starting out strong, man.
You put me in a coma, and I won't sue you. I promise.
How am I going to top 10 gins on the next one? Okay, all right, I'll take.
We'll just up our scoreboard.
Live up to that now. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me, for watching the movie, for advocating for it. And I'm going to keep making noir stuff. So have me on next.
Hit us up, man. We'll be here.
We'll talk.
Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, guys.
Good luck. All right, folks at home, thank you for listening to us babble about American Murder. We hope you guys check it out on October 21st in the theater. That's where I'm going to be. If not, if you can't make it, catch it on VOD. It'll be available everywhere. And keep an eye out for what Matthew does next. And until next time.
Bye-bye.
He's looking at you, kid.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Speakeasy Noircast. Make sure to visit our website, resurrectionfilms.net, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, The Dark Side of Acting Up, and The Dark Side of Acting Up Volume 2, now available on Amazon. Or you can check out one of our films, also available on Amazon Prime. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the Speakeasy Noircast.